So what do you do when your steering helm, hydraulic steering helm, in your boat is leaking? First thing you check is the shaft under the steering wheel. That's a really easy part to fix if that's your problem. The only other place it's really going to leak is the backside. That's not a fun place to fix. That's where this one's leaking, so that's where we're going. Sit back, enjoy. This fix might help you on your boat. I don't know. We'll see. It might not even help this one. Got a Uflex steering helm. And the problem I'm having is it's leaking. I cleaned it off, the hose fittings, all that was great. It stayed dry. I'm thinking it might be leaking in this seam. All right. So it might be leaking down in here, because that is super oily. You can almost see it just running on there. But yeah, we're gonna take a few of these bolts out of here and see if we can't figure out what the heck's causing this leak. Maybe see what the heck we can do to fix it if you don't have the gasket that you need for it. So yep, we'll get these bolts out, we'll bring y'all back. I don't know, so I can't imagine why this would be leaking. There's no gasket material on here. Where is that? No. Okay, so upon closer inspection, there's little O-rings around these holes. These oval holes have an O-ring. So this section isn't part of the reservoir, so that should be dry inside there anyway. So that's why there's no gasket material. We'll stick this back on and dive in here a little bit further down. I know this is part of the reservoir and there should be a gasket around this surface. Being that there's so much oil right here, I'm leaning towards this gasket being our problem, especially now that we know that that's probably all right. We got this pulled out. This is under some spring pressure. I'll show y'all how I got it out of there when we go to put it back in. This is the gasket. I didn't clean it up any yet, but it's just a paper looking gasket. That'll clean off of there. But the big problem I'm seeing is there's not much of a seal surface. Is that little lip is all that seals this thing. And I don't know if that's the same over other brands or not. But that is not much of an edge to seal. I was hoping it'd be wide enough I could just make a gasket. Maybe use a little silicone. But with this setup, I think what I'm going to end up doing is cleaning up this gasket. Put just a fine layer of silicone around that edge, reusing it, and see if that won't get us by a little bit longer. At least until I can get a new gasket. Everything else is looking pretty good inside here. We got everything cleaned up with some brake clean. Best stuff in the world right there. I don't know that you ever use it on brakes, but it's great for everything else. We got all the oil off of here. We cleaned up this gasket. Got all the oil off of it, so it's dry now. And then we got all the oil we could off of that little lip. There's a few spots where you can see that powder coating is kind of flaking. I'm sure that's not helping the issue. But we're gonna try it anyway. So what I'm gonna do, this paper gasket is in one piece. It's no cracks or anything in it. I'm gonna put a real light layer of silicone, just plain 100% silicone, right around this edge on both sides. And we're gonna set this booger back together and hope for the best. I don't recommend this repair as a permanent fix. It might not repair it at all. We'll see. I'll show you. If it's a failure, it's a failure. But yeah, I'll get some silicone and start getting this thing stacked back together. show you what you need to do to get it back together, because this is under some spring tension. If you're not careful, you could strip one of them little short screws out. And I was pretty serious by a light layer. I mean, you see, it's not gooped up on there. You don't want a bunch of floaties in that steering helm. So, yeah, just take it easy with that step. Alright, so our gasket's back in there, our holes are all lined up. We're gonna center this up. We're gonna go right back. See, we just spilled oil. We need to clean that off again. Alright, well, we're gonna try it again. I think what we'll do is we'll just stab it in there and then we can turn it, because it's gonna set up. There we go. And remember where your hoses were in relation to your fill. So we're right there. What I ended up doing was getting 2 longer bolts, that same thread. It's hard to do one-handed, bear with me. A bigger washer. Find that bolt hole. Alright, I'm gonna need both hands to get this lined up and make sure I didn't move my gasket. So we got our 2 guide screws in, kind of exactly opposite each other. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna just tighten this nut, and that should slowly pull this back together. It doesn't have to go all the way down with those, but we want to get it pretty close to where it's going. We don't want to snug it all the way down tight, so we might have to move it just a little, get the other bolts lined up. Give it a few turns on this side, go back to the other side, give it a few turns on this one. So, I mean, you can see it kind of working. Let's just slowly pull it in. That's what we're going for. So I guess I should have started with this first, so you could have seen that these bolts just, before, they wouldn't even have touched this where they need to go. So now we can start threading these in. We got plenty of threads to bite and hold. And once we get these snug down, we can remove these 2 and use the factory bolts. All right, so we got these 4 in. And what we're gonna do, just give it a little turn. We're gonna work our way around. It's pretty loose there, just give it a turn. Little turn. Yeah, it's already loose. So we can go ahead and pull these out. They've done what they need to do. So we still got a pretty good ways to go. This, if I remember correctly, was sitting almost flush. So I'm just gonna do a little turn or so, go across. Don't pull down one side too tight. You know, you want it to go back together as flat as possible. It won't take much. I mean, it's taking me twice as long as I'm trying to hold the dang camera. We're getting pretty close to there. It's definitely starting to snug up. So now I just got to hold this. We'll torque them all down. I'm not going to put anything extra on here. Just going to do it by hand. Try not to over tighten and break anything, because that makes jobs way worse than it needs to be. But yeah, we'll get this finished up. This deal had quite a bit of spring tension on it. When I started unscrewing it, it started lifting right up out of there. So what I did to get it off was I found a bolt, the same thread. The threads were actually longer. Screwed it in the hole. And then I used this nut to screw down to a point that it was the pressure was holding on this bolt and one across from it. So that allowed me to get these other bolts pulled out while these were holding everything kind of in place. And once those are out, I could just unscrew these nuts little by little on each side and let this just raise up on its own until, you know, the spring pressure, the spring wasn't pushing anymore. You know, at that point, then you can unscrew these and take your whatever you're trying to take apart. It works the same to install it. I think I showed that pretty well in the video, but this little trick works pretty good for this kind of stuff. If you're ever working on mercury fuel rails, it works real good for the tracker valve, fuel pressure regulator, air pressure regulator. I don't recommend going into those, but if you ever have to, this little trick right here works like a champ. Alright, well, got it all back together, got it torqued down, cleaned up. I might let it sit till tomorrow. I'm gonna let it sit for a couple hours at least, give that silicone some chance to skin over, maybe dry up before I put oil back in there. Alright, so we're back. It's been a few hours. So I decided I'm gonna go ahead and try and fill it up this evening. The silicone's had plenty of time to skin over, so it should be fine. Alright, so we got her all installed, cleaned up, fixing to get back on the top side, put some oil in there. So this is the tools we're going to use. You can pick up these steering hoses, most both places will have them. They'll thread into where your fill port is. And let's get you that kind of in. I'll see if I can get all this set up. Trying to do it with one hand just may not work out so well, but we'll see what happens. Oh. Got a rag wrapped around here pretty tight to catch any drips that might possibly happen. Alright, so bottle's hooked to the hose, rolls down, tip it up, let her start squeezing in there. It's going to take a little bit since it's completely drained out. So once we get there, I'll bring y'all back. Alright, so you can kind of see where the level's at. So now we're going to turn the steering wheel. I don't think I'm going to have to worry about bleeding the entire system because the hoses stayed up at the top. I didn't lose a bunch of fluid out of the hoses. So what I'm going to do is just work the steering wheel a little ways this way. And go a little ways back. You see the fluid level in there, the air's coming out. So I'm not going to do full turns until I get most of this air to quit popping. So now we can start doing some full turns. It should have worked any air that might have been at the top of those lines out. So now we'll just give her hell. Give her a couple of turns back and forth. This isn't going to be a full system bleed. One of these days I'll do a video on that. I'll set up a tripod, make it a little easier on me and a lot easier on any viewers that might actually be watching this far into the video. But yeah, this helm isn't pushing out any more air. We should be nice and full. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to hold this bottle down. We're just going to pull this hose, let the air bubbles run up there to the top. Alright, so we got all the oil back in the jug. Pull this hose off. And now we can just unscrew this. It'll probably dribble a little bit out. It's not a huge deal. That's what that rag's for. We'll reinstall the little vent cap. Probably had to use pliers to get it off. Don't put it back on with pliers. Just tighten her up. And really, it's kind of hard to see, but I mean, we didn't dribble anything out of there. So, doing good. We'll give her a few spins. This should be a vented cap. It might push a little bit out when we spin it, but it probably won't. So everything feels good. I'll update this video tomorrow morning. Maybe next week. See if we get any drips. Alright, so just for reference, August 10th. We'll check back with it in a week. It's been 2 days. No oil puddle on the floor. That's a really good sign. And there doesn't appear to be any drips or anything forming on the bottom. Yeah. That might just work out. We'll check back. We'll give it a few more days. We'll check back again. August 19th. It's been a week. No drip on the floor yet. We'll check the bottom side in just a second. Well, it does look like we got a little drip forming. Maybe not quite 100% repaired, but it at least slowed crap down quite a bit. We'll get another gasket and pull it back out and try again. If I remember right, this Helm has been pretty much at a slow drip since the day it was new, so there might just be something wrong with that dang housing. Anyway, we'll end off this video right here. Thanks for watching. Maybe this will help you out. It might be a good fix for somebody else's boat. Okay, well, I cleaned this up a little bit, and I think it might actually be leaking out. There's an O-ring behind here. I'm thinking it might actually be that O-ring that is causing my drip now. It's filling around this body. I didn't really feel any oil. And before, you know, the oil would run down this lowest point. So I'd kind of feel it up here, but it felt fairly dry. I just had that little drip coming out from under this cap. So I'm gonna change that O-ring out, and I'll update the description if anything changes. Well, that just happened. My dang flashlight go. Oh, put it right back in my pocket where it's supposed to be. Now, it might look like a water hose shooting out of there when I go to fill it up. That'd be entertaining, wouldn't it?